Hey everybody, this is the Smoke Break, and I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com, and PurpleTerritoryRadio.com. Really quickly, just want to point out that we are doing a pretty cool event on Friday at McDonald's Liquor with Grey Duck Vodka and Total Sports Enterprises. Chad Greenaway will be on hand to sign bottles of Grey Duck Vodka, as well as one item per person that you bring from home. You can find all the details on the Facebook pages for McDonald's Liquor, Grey Duck Vodka, and PurplePTSD.com. Where do I start with today's game? You go into a game like this, and on the first drive, you see the starting quarterback for the opposing team, Trubisky, going out for the entire game, probably out for at least a game or two with a shoulder injury, and your immediate thought is that, wow, this is going to be great. We're going to win this game. It's going to be huge for us. It's in Chicago. The team struggles in Chicago. Either during the pregame or the halftime show or both. I talked about the last time Chad Greenaway was on my podcast, which he will also be on my podcast on Tuesday morning at 9:30. Morning Joe's is the name of that show. And how I asked him after the game that was before his appearance. So he was appearing on the show after the Bears game, which was a loss in Chicago. And I asked him about the Vikings and their performance in Chicago, especially under Zimmer, and why they had such a problem there. And I expected to hear something, Joe Oberle, who was the co-host of my show, Morning Joe's, has always told me, that it takes a lot of coordination to get a current player on a podcast. You have to go through the team. You get put on a list, and it's really not worth the effort because you're just going to get really generic, cliche answers from them. So I expected to get one of those answers from Greenaway about, they're a tough team, we play hard, it just doesn't go our way. And he essentially told me, on the way to Soldier Field, we all know in the back of our heads, or we've even discussed it, we know we're going to fuck it up because it's in Chicago. That stuck in my mind for a few reasons, but it made me really not know what to think about this week's game. In general, I also will preface this by saying I obviously was one of the main people pulling for Cousins to come to Minnesota last offseason, and last season I thought that he started out strong and he really carried the team to start the season because the defense wasn't playing well. There was no run game the entire season. Offensive line was terrible, and I thought with all those components firing at the same time, this team had a lot of potential. Some people might be different than me. I really have no problem admitting when I'm wrong with football. I think when you are in the position that I'm in and you make predictions either about scores or certain situations, which team's going to be good, which team's going to be bad, you're wrong more often than you're right. And if you're a I don't want to put it that way. I was going to say if you're a semi-decent human being. But I think if you want to maintain credibility, you have to be the anti-Stephen A. Smith and admit when you're wrong, and not make continuing justifications. I could sit here and say, well, he made 13 completions in a row. So, it's more, whatever. If you were in the live chat, you would have seen me saying things that maybe sounded like I was defending Cousins when I wasn't. My point was, and this is an extremely depressing point, it's not just Cousins. The team was playing bad across the board today. They just were. Diggs, I don't know what he's doing this season. He's being selfish when he makes plays. I understand he's frustrated and he's an emotional guy. But you're an adult. You're making millions of dollars. Come through. The Vikings gave you a contract predicated on potential, not necessarily on output, statistically. He has yet to live up to the amount of money that he's making. But going back to my original point, you think when you're going against Chase Daniels that this should be an easy win for this team. Sure, it's in Chicago. Sure, the Bears have a really good defense. But the best way for me to put it is, have you ever seen the Vikings defense with all the players that they have that are all pro, or Pro Bowl players, with Zimmer being this defensive genius that everyone talks about. Have you ever seen them play as physically dominating, or as aggressive, or as just not even giving an inch of daylight as the Bears played today without Hicks? I really can't remember a time consistently in general, but let alone in a big game. This was a huge game. The Vikings would be 3-1. They would be at at the logjam for first place in this division. Now we're in last place. We're 2-2. Sure, we're a game out, but we're 0-2 in the division. That's something. Sure, they were playing both those games on the road, but you look at the other side of it. That Packers game was a huge opportunity for them to win. They should have won that game. They lost that game. The Packers did not win that game. Then you go into Chicago, a place where you struggle, and you have to go, oh, God, well, Trubisky, can we keep him in the pocket? If we can, we have a really good shot, but if he runs, we'll have problems. He's out after the first drive. That's a huge gift. And you play like that? So what is the problem? That's the real question. I could go through all my notes. I could talk about, most of my notes, the talking points, they all tie back to the same thing. So that's why I really don't want to waste your guys' time doing it. And I'll read some of your comments. And if you guys have questions, please do ask. I'll tell you what I think if you care about that. You could say, well, like Romo did, why didn't they go into no huddle the sooner, the drive before? The Bears weren't playing the level of defense they were the entire game towards the end of the game. That always happens in the NFL. Their offense was running out the clock, so they weren't playing the way that they were. And I get that when you game plan for 100 hours for Trubisky, and then all of a sudden Chase Daniels comes out, it kind of turns things on its head, because then instead of limiting a guy to play in the pocket, you definitely want to get Daniels to play outside the pocket, right? But it's Chase Daniels. It's not Peyton Manning. For the money, this is the point. Everything ties back to this. I can't think of another coach outside of one that rhymes with Telechek that has had as much carte blanche as Zimmer has had in regards to free agents, in regards to how to spend draft picks, high-end draft picks. I've argued for a long time that Spielman has an inability to say no to Zimmer during the draft, and that has affected the offense, namely the offensive line, because Zimmer has just been loading up on DBs, and you take the window of opportunity that was the Sam Bradford era, and you have a bunch of guys over 30 years old, one of which was sitting on the couch the season previously, and Jake Long, a guy like Andre Smith, who was known as being lazy, injury-prone, so on and so forth. So you get these old guys that are injury-prone, that are over 30 years old. A little over, like enough over 30 to where you think, ugh. And then the entire offensive line falls apart because Long gets injured, Andre Smith is injured, and everyone says, well, it's just bad luck. The Vikings, they have bad luck. No, that's not bad luck. When you get injury-prone guys and they get injured, you should have foreseen that. They were throwing a Band-Aid over a shotgun wound to the head at that point. And, of course, the Band-Aid didn't work, and then people were just saying it's bad luck. It doesn't work that way. So, I'm not even complaining about that per se, but I'm saying that if that's what you do and you give Zimmer that much carte blanche, he should do something with it. And I have said this before the season. I said this last year. I think we've seen the peak of what Zimmer can do. I wrote an article around this time last year saying Zimmer was on the hot seat. I got killed for it. I said that because the defense was seemingly given up. They weren't trying. They weren't playing the way that they should have to start the season. And everyone said, well, Zimmer added too much to the scheme. They just need to let these guys play. And sure, I said even before in the pregame that this was the best that this defense has started a season. But that's because they haven't had these big games. The only Raiders game, you can't really judge anything from that because they're the Raiders. The Packers game, they came out flat and they couldn't overcome it. That was a big game. This was a big game and they didn't show up. So that's Zimmer's legacy. They can be this great defense when it doesn't matter against bad teams. They're the Kirk Cousins of defenses. When it's a big game against a team with talent, they don't show up. They don't. I posed the question on the live chat because I'll see if he's here. He's not. Me and a guy named Dominic during the halftime show, he was chatting, asking questions, saying, I said, when was the last time this Vikings team has won a big game? And the only one I can think of is the Saints game, and they basically blew that game. Wasn't it like 20-0 at halftime, and then they almost gave it up, and it took like a once-in-a-lifetime miraculous thing for them to win that game? Then they go out to Philly, and they get embarrassed. I am really tired of hearing people like Tony Romo or Spielman's brother saying things that are objectively embarrassing about this team. Like blatantly stupid things, like the team shouldn't do this, or why aren't they running these plays earlier, or like common sense things. I'm not an X's and O's guy. I'm not that deep into football that way because it doesn't interest me. And I think you can glean enough from outcome to not necessarily say, well, that jet sweep, but I'm not insulting people that do that because I know people do that. I'm just like, I don't do it. But it's not because I'm stupid or I was going to say lazy, but I'm extremely lazy. I've been wearing the same pair of sweatpants since Bill Clinton was in office. But hearing that from people, just glaringly stupid things. Zimmer, I don't think is a head coach. I never thought he was a good head coach. He doesn't delegate even. He gives complete power to whoever runs the offense. He has his microphone up. I would do it, but it would mute me. He has this part up when the Vikings have the ball. He's a glorified defensive coordinator, and maybe he could be good in that role with this team. And I get some people are saying, should we get rid of him after this season or next if things continue this way? And at this point, I don't know. I mean, I do think you need to inject something. I think if Gary Kubiak, who has had amazing experience turning teams around with way worse personnel than this team has on offense, if he can't figure it out, I think there's a problem somewhere else. This team was just not up for this game. They should have been, especially after Chase Daniels came in, and they weren't. My girlfriend has been a Packers fan her entire life, and now she is coming over to the Vikings just because she doesn't want me to kick her out, I guess. And she said something at the end of the game that I think is really interesting, and I want her to write articles because she has this really new perspective on being a Vikings fan, that we get so entrenched in it that we don't think of it. But she said being a Vikings fan is tiring or exhausting, and they have so many good players. They have all the pieces they need, but they don't perform. It's like really, really frustrating. And for her to say that, I mean, that's exactly what the problem is. And so you have to ask, why aren't they performing? And these guys, some people will say it's not fair, but Zimmer's paid millions and millions of dollars, and I know he puts his best foot forward, and he works 120 hours a week, and his eyeball fell out, but he's not coming through. He just isn't. It's his fault because the same thing keeps happening. I was worried after the Packers game that how do you fix Cousins? Because if you tell him not to take shots down the field or to rely on what his instinct is, because his instinct is clearly wrong, that they're going to limit it and you're going to end up with 13 possessions in a row for 50 yards because he's going to dump the ball off over and over again. That's what he's turned into Case Keenum without the mobility. To give him that much money. So I am totally telling you right now, and I'm hoping this backfires big time. But Zimmer just can't get it done. He can't. We'll beat the Giants. That'll placate some people. But at the end of it, we're not going to, even if we win every game the rest of the way, we're going to lose in the playoffs because we can't come through. Whether that's Zimmer over scheming, which some people think, whether it's this, or that, the outcome is always the same. It doesn't matter what the complaints are. Cousins is only part of the reason this game sucked. That's again, very depressing. Yeah. Tang Yang, I agree with you. The adjustment is terrible. Zimmer's never been the greatest at adjusting. Look at the Saints game. It's a great example. Sean Payton adjusted at halftime, and he could not fix it. It was like a completely different game. He couldn't adjust to what Doug Peterson was doing. He's been outclassed by Nagy 3 times now. He's not the guru people think he is. He might not even mean a good defensive coordinator. He might be a good DB coach. He's not a head coach. Every single offensive coordinator that we've had has been able to do whatever they want. They call every play. And if Zimmer was a good defensive coordinator, you think he would have his microphone down and he'd be saying, hey, this is what I see on defense. Just some input. Maybe you guys don't need to hear that, but this is what they're doing. It doesn't seem like he does that because his microphone's on mute. Okay, so I'm going to read some of what you guys are saying. Sorry. Yeah, Keith, I agree with you too. That's a really good point about the cover, doing a soft cover 4 zone against this team. Chase Daniels, the bums that the Bears have as wide receivers. Somebody in the live chat said, "Why all of a sudden are this awful Bears offense making all these acrobatic and Randy Moss-esque catches?" That's a good question. I don't know. I made a joke about God hating the Vikings. I don't even think it's a joke at this point. But Tang said that his career in Minnesota is going to be defined by poor offensive line play since his first season. And I'm not saying you're implying this, but that's his fault. It's Spielman's fault, but it's his fault. What was it? Up until Brian O'Neill? Yeah. The Vikings hadn't picked an offensive lineman before the 4th round since Matt Khalil, which was 2012. And I know that Zimmer was right around the time that he emerged from the Triangle of Authority and had full authority, and that was the highest draft pick in Vikings history, and maybe he felt burned by it. But that draft was garbage, as you can see, with Andrew Luck retiring the top 5 picks in that draft, the only one still playing in the league is Khalil. It was just a bad draft. So he felt burned by it, but you can't. That's not your job. Not every player is the same. You can't win in a league where I would argue the most important position group outside of the quarterback position is the offensive line. And if you don't invest in it, that's what happens. And Zimmer is culpable because he is like a crackhead who sees that, I know I should pay my rent, but that's some really delicious looking crack over there. But in this instance, the crack is a cornerback. And it does look like, we kind of needed it because look at the cornerback depth problem. But, look at 3 first-round picks, including Xavier Rhodes, which was before Zimmer's tenure. You have a second-round, and then Waynes, and then Hughes, and then you have Mackenzie Alexander as the second-round pick. I don't want to hear about depth at the cornerback position because this team is much more adept at developing late-round defensive talent than it is at developing late-round offensive line talent. None of those guys stuck. Willie Beavers, all the 7th-round guys they'd bring in just to placate people like me. They couldn't find late-round depth there. Everyone on this line, Elfline, was a 3rd-round pick. You have Bradbury was a 1st-round pick. Riley Reef, free agents. Josh Klein, free agents. Samia, 4th-round pick, right? So that doesn't count because he hasn't played. Or we don't know what his career is going to end up being. And then Brian O'Neill, 2nd-round pick. Case closed. Goo. Blackjack, yeah, it's embarrassing. It's humiliating. To hear Tony Romo, and he is a great color commentator, and he's almost, everyone thinks he can tell the future, but no, he understands football because he was a quarterback. So, and he communicates it in a way that's new for people that don't listen to really in-depth guys that we have on our network. Anyway, I'm not saying me, but it's embarrassing. It's humiliating. At one point, the Vikings hadn't had a first down for 20 in-game minutes. Before their touchdown, we got the ball on the 6, and I said, they just have to double their entire day in yardage to get a touchdown, which they ended up doing. But still, that's this isn't what the results do not match the ingredients. There's no team on paper that is better than this Vikings team in the league, especially on defense. And that's how they play in these games that matter. Ugh. Chase Daniels? Are you kidding me? Sure, it's only 16 points, but they shouldn't score any damn points. And the offense is just garbage. Stefanski, fire him. Let Kubiak call the plays. That's my article for tomorrow. Fire Stefanski. Kubiak needs to call the plays. He just does. He's got too much of a track record of in a single offseason with the same personnel creating miracles. That has to happen. Yeah, Keith, man, it all boils down to the same thing. Just stick in the mud, deer in the headlights, play calling on offense. Then you have the same result from Cousins. I don't know if they've told him not to throw down the field and just to dump the ball off, but that wasn't working. I mean, the Bears have a great defense, but to see the level of hustle and physicality across two regimes, Chuck Pagano and Dick Fangio. And we have Zimmer, 10 of 11 starters, the 11th starter being basically the 11th starter. I mean, being gone for a year and coming back. And this is the result? But they can get a new offensive coordinator and not miss a beat? I'm just tired of it. You know, the Wilfs, there's no excuses. When we had Red McCombs, it was like he won't pay any money for defense, so we're going to have to score 1 million points, and then the defense will go into prevent, and then Jimmy Hitchcock will somehow score a touchdown on the Vikings himself. Now you have owners who will pay for anything, who okayed the biggest contract in NFL history at the time in Cousins. And I'm not saying Cousins is blameless. I made a whole video after the Packers game saying I was off the bandwagon and that I don't know how you fix it because I'm sure he'll come through against the Raiders, but when it comes to the playoffs, he'll blow it. You know, he played like garbage, but the line sucked. BC Johnson was good, I guess. I mean, Nate, that Pizza Ranch commercial. Also, what a horrible name for a restaurant. Pizza Ranch? Who came up with that? The guy that invented Dress Barn? Boo. Who wants to go? Let's go to Pizza Ranch. Yeah, I'll put on my cummerbund. And I said before the game it had come down to turnovers, and that I was afraid that Cousins would fumble. I should pull that up, but again, lazy. Yeah, you can't do that in these games. I predicted a score 14-13. 16-6 is pretty damn close. I knew that this was. Ooh, I like that. Clueless cookie. Zing. I made a joke about I bought this pipe, even though I'm not a big weed smoking guy because I'm too clearly high strung for it. But there's some sort of symbolism there that describes my existential depression. Speaking of which, this is a good segue. We're throwing a Vikings-themed event on Friday. We're all going to go into the woods and drink poison purple Kool-Aid, Jim Jones style. No, Chad Greenway owns Grey Duck Vodka, and he will be at McDonald's Liquor on Friday, starting at 5 p.m., signing bottles of Grey Duck Vodka, and then also one item per person. And there'll be some cool raffle stuff. We're giving away tickets to a Deep Purple concert at the Coliseum. Is that what it's called? The Arboretum. What is that place called downtown? Where the Minneapolis Lakers used to play. You guys know what I'm talking about.
We also have a daily raffle.
Oh, yeah. We're doing a daily raffle on McDonald's Liquor Facebook. If you go to McDonald's, go to Facebook, type in McDonald's Liquor. McDonald's like the restaurant. If you RSVP to the event on Friday and then share the event, you can win a really cool Vikings blanket. Will you go grab that blanket?
Sure.
It's not the same one, but it's pretty cool.
So you've got 6 chances to win now.
Yeah, 6 chances out of 7. We every night
Winners announced
at
every
8.
night at 8.
We announce a winner. You have a pretty good shot. I mean, it's like a 1 in 5 shot. There's the Vikings blanket.
Your head is so large.
I know. It's called what's that waterhead disease?
I don't know. Joe?
Hydroencephaly.
Massive
Oh,
institution.
I got a subscriber because he likes my shirt. This is slowly devolving into like one of those live Jasmine webcam things. I'll do anything for clicks. Yeah, man, you called it. Link to the past. It sounds like one of my therapy sessions. Link to the past. So there I was, prom. Thanks for the sub, man. Our post game show about the labor with Kirby O'Connor, Sean Borman, maybe Nick Olson should be going live any minute now. Tune into that. I'm gonna be doing more smoke breaks during the week, starting this week, because I'm in my elements when I'm upset. But I hope you guys will consider coming out on Friday. I'll be there for better or for worse. Mr. Greenway will be there. You'll be able to drink some vodka for free, a few different cool beers, some wine. We'll be doing some cool giveaways, silent auction as well with really cool merch. If you can see up here, that one, that's the Minneapolis Miracle, autographed by Diggs himself with like a little plaque. You can buy one of those, and it's I think a no reserve silent auction. So Total Sports Enterprises, if you go to their website, tseshopmn.com, you'll see some of the stuff that'll be there. It's the coolest stuff that you can hold on to for this season and then put into a heap in your driveway and then start on fire. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm going to go use this Vikings pipe, hopefully to get some bath salts so I can eat my own face. Tune into About the Labor if you're a glutton for punishment, if you're like the albino from the Da Vinci Code that like flogs himself. That's how I feel about it. I also really like that response. Cynic, us. 5 points for Gryffindor. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll be back most likely tomorrow. Hopefully see you guys on Friday as well. And I forgot to mention, Chad Greenway will be on my podcast, Morning Joe's, Tuesday morning at 9:30 a.m. is what we're shooting for. If that changes, check our social media. I'll let you know. But we're going to be going live, so hopefully you guys will tune in. I'll broadcast it across all these channels as well. I always end the show with Skull, but I refuse to at this point. Ugh. The dream is over.